was the first person in America to point out, I was on national TV, that a man who is a convicted felon serving time in prison can be president of the United States. And the person on the air with me thought that was nuts, but within 2 days, everybody was saying that. And everybody now understands that. A conviction will cause a great rapid drop in support for Trump. That's the one thing we found in numerous polls going back a couple of years, that people will put up with a lot of things, but if you're a convicted felon, they don't want you to be president of the United States. Joe Biden will win the popular vote, and I believe he'll win this fall by more than 10 million votes. But that does not mean he becomes president, because in America, we elect by state, and Trump only needs to win 6 states that could go either way to go back into the White House, where he promises that on day one he'll be dictator. And if you believe he'll give up his being a dictator the next day, as he claims, well, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Okay, so it was a consequential hearing today, and for nearly 3 hours, the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington weighed whether former presidents are immune from prosecution and what exactly it means if they are. Its answer will determine whether former President Donald Trump can be tried on charges of trying to subvert the 2020 election. Whatever the decision, each justice indicated that it would shape US democracy for years to come. So let's talk about this now with David Cay Johnston, investigative journalist and author of It's Even Worse Than You Think: What the Trump Administration is Doing to America and the Making of Donald Trump. David, hello again.
Great to be with you again, Henry.
All right, so let's start off where we should. Justice Neil Gorsuch, appointed by Trump, when he said, "Are you not entertained?" when he unveiled him, said, okay, we're writing a rule for the ages. So what does that mean, would you say?
Well, the issue here is Donald Trump's claim that as president of the United States, he has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. This is an extraordinary claim for many reasons, not the least of which is that the presidential oath says you're to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And Trump's lawyers have actually argued that the president could order the military to kill his political opponent and presumably anybody else. They would be liable for following an illegal order of the president and could be prosecuted. But Trump's lawyers assert that a president must have this absolute immunity from criminal conduct, or he can't be president. No previous president, by the way, has made this assertion, and the current president, Joe Biden, has mocked it.
Right. And what about the response of the 9 justices, including those appointed by Trump? How did they react to the arguments put forward by Trump's lawyers?
This was a just very bizarre 3-hour hearing today, Henry. The court's majority, the conservative majority, seemed to be asking about, well, are there certain areas of law where the president could commit crimes and he would be exempted and would have immunity from this? Not, why are we talking about this? Of course, the president of the United States is subject to the law. I think that the majority of the justices are trying to find a way to send this back to the trial court so that it will delay the proceedings so that Trump can't be tried until after the election. And I realize I'm saying that they're being blatantly political, but from watching and reading news accounts today, I can tell you that I'm far from alone in interpreting it that way.
Don't presidents already have a degree of immunity anyway? So, for example, people have tried to or have suggested that George W. Bush be prosecuted for an illegal war in Iraq, or Barack Obama should be prosecuted for being the drone president. But those claims, those attempts never got off the ground because he was commander-in-chief and he was in a war situation and it was part and parcel of his official duties, no matter how appalling you might have thought the outcome.
Yes. And so much of the discussion today by the court was, well, where is the line between official duties and personal or campaign duties? And in the transfer of power to a new president under the U.S. Constitution, the president has no role whatsoever. None. It is the vice president who presides during the joint session of the Senate and the House. And This issue was only brought up by the newest member of the court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who, as in every previous hearing I've listened to, went right to the heart of the issue and basically said, why are we discussing this stuff over here about which crimes the president can commit?
Yes.
And got right to the heart. She's clearly the most brilliant legal scholar. And, I also teach law, and that's what I have told my law school students, that she's outstanding, even in comparison to the other Supreme Court justices.
Well, it's amazing you say. I say not amazing, but it's good. It's interesting you say that, because I remember at the time of her hearings and confirmation hearings, some of the sentences were trying to give the impression that she was some kind of diversity and inclusion pick.
Yes, well, there's no shortage of racism in America, and of course, Donald Trump's campaign, and I've covered him for 36 years, known him for those years. Make America Great Again is seen by many people as a campaign to make America white again.
Yeah. Well. And it'll be interesting to see how Americans respond to the 2.0 version of this, assuming Trump is eventually the nominee come November, which everyone expects him to be. So there was a 3-hour hearing today. What happens next?
Well, the court now will come up with an opinion. You can be virtually certain there'll be a divided court. My guess is it'll be 5-4 or 6-3. And there will probably be several concurring and dissenting separate opinions. But fundamentally, I expect that the Supreme Court will say, well, there's all these unresolved issues, and they'll send it back to the district court. That guarantees that Trump will not be tried on his effort to overthrow the government on January 6th until after the election on November 5.
Okay, but what about what's happening in New York then? A different trial, and one which Trump is being forced to attend every day, and he looks furious.
He's very upset. I don't see how Donald will get through another 5 or 6 weeks of this, having to sit in the chair and be quiet. Today, David Pecker, who was the publisher of a tabloid called The National Enquirer that's infamous for nonsense stuff, aliens from Mars are the father of
I've seen a few copies in my time, David. I've seen a few copies in my time.
And he laid out how for decades he has engaged with politicians and movie stars, Governor Schwarzenegger in California when he was an actor, to catch and kill. That is, pay people to buy the rights to their story and then not publish them. And at that point, the person can't talk about something. And talked about how he did this for Trump, how he knew it was for Trump. And what was significant in the testimony is Donald's story is, well, I did this to keep it from my wife, Melania. David Pecker, who said, I'm still his friend, said under oath that, no, that was never discussed. What he talked about was influencing the election. That's the charge against Trump, that you paid hush money to 2 women, a porn star and a Playboy model, to keep their mouths shut, and you did so in an effort to corrupt the election and violate New York state law that says you can't do that.
Wow. Does David Pecker put himself in any legal jeopardy by being so candid? I.e., yes, he said he wanted to influence the election, and I said, okay, I'll help you.
Yes, although he has federal immunity, so he can't be prosecuted on the federal level. And I think it's very clear that the local prosecutor, the district attorney in Manhattan, is not going to charge him. And since the crimes occurred in Manhattan, I don't think David Pecker is in any legal jeopardy so long as he tells the truth.
Yeah. And what about other big witnesses coming down the track? I'm presuming Michael Cohen will be up soon.
Michael Cohen will be a witness, and there's been a lot made in the press that, well, Michael Cohen, is a liar. Michael Cohen went to prison for the exact same crime being charged here, and his job was to lie on behalf of Donald Trump. Once Trump turned on him, and it was the Trump administration that prosecuted him, he has been completely candid and straightforward. In his conversations with me, every fact he's given out has held up when I go check it, because it's in his interest now to tell the truth. And, prosecutors put on professional killers as witnesses and people who committed numerous crimes Everybody lies. Any parent who's had a 4-year-old who goes, "Daddy, is Santa Claus real?" You're lying.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they'll have trouble rehabilitating him. But with Pecker as a witness and the documents, Trump really doesn't have any defenses here. The only thing his lawyers can do is try to muddy what are pretty clear waters and hope that the jury may say, yeah, it's not that big a deal. And they could decide to engage in nullification. Yeah, he did it, but we don't think it's important. Don't think that's likely with a jury in Manhattan, but you don't know until the jury comes back.
Yeah. And finally, David, the more Trump gets indicted, the more his poll rating and his resources, the funds, go up. But if he is convicted, what impact might that have on floating voters, on independents, on people who think, I don't want a convicted felon to be the nominee, let alone the president of the United States?
So, Henry, the most recent polling shows he's heading down, not up. I also don't think the polls are particularly reliable because fewer than 1 in 100 people who answer the phone will answer the questions. I was the first person in America to point out, I was on national TV, that a man who is a convicted felon serving time in prison can be president of the United States. And the person on the air with me thought that was nuts, but within 2 days, everybody was saying that. and everybody now understands that. A conviction will cause a great rapid drop in support for Trump. That's the one thing we found in numerous polls going back a couple of years, that people will put up with a lot of things, but if you're a convicted felon, they don't want you to be president of the United States. Joe Biden will win the popular vote, and I believe he'll win this fall by more than 10 million votes. But that does not mean he becomes president, because in America, we elect by state, and Trump only needs to win 6 states that could go either way to go back into the White House, where he promises that on day one he'll be dictator. And if you believe he'll give up his being a dictator the next day, as he claims, well, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
I'm not buying, David. Caveat emptor. Thank you very much indeed. That's David Cay Johnston, investigative journalist and author of It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America.